Welcome to Scary Time by Indie Drop-In Network. Each week we feature an episode from the best independent creators. Subscribe for great scary content. If you would like to help support indie creators, check out our Patreon at the bottom of the show notes. Today's episode is from Nopeville. Don't forget to check out the show notes for links to subscribe and follow on social media. Enjoy the show.
Begin.
Down this road is a small city once thriving and full of life, but now desolate and abandoned. Well, abandoned save for the horrors rumored to reside within, which I presume is why you're here. Now, there's nothing wrong with a little morbid curiosity, but please, remember to stay close to your guides. We wouldn't want anyone to get left behind now.
Hello and welcome to Nopeville, the city filled with all the scary shit that makes you say no.
Nope.
Today's tour, we're going somewhere really, really cool.
Yeah, we're headed to the suburb where we've sequestered all of our zombies. You might actually hear them kind of hanging out behind the plexiglass over there.
You can hear them moaning and groaning, wanting to eat you, but don't worry, we got you.
Oh, wait, actually, we should maybe kind of scoot a little further away so they don't notice us.
Yep. Uh-oh.
Yeah, we don't want the technicians
All
to
right.
come and have to clean that glass again.
Yeah, we hired technicians.
Just for that.
Aren't we professional?
Specifically for that.
Special zombie technicians.
Cleaning glass only.
That's a tough job,
Oh, yeah.
especially when something wants to eat
Yeah,
you.
they're pretty gross.
So today, as you can see, it is our zombie tour. So make sure you check your tickets and make sure that's what your tour says. Because if not,
Well, you're already here, and we'll deal with you later.
maybe put you in the zombie pit.
So, obviously, zombies have been around for a very long time, so there's going to be a lot of information. Thus, this is actually part 1 of our zombie tour.
It's another VIP 2-part experience for
Yeah,
you.
look at you guys, all your VIPs.
You're welcome. We give and we give.
Always. We give so much of ourselves, just like the zombies do. They'll
Yep.
give you their heart
Yeah.
if they really, really like you.
And they'll eat yours in exchange.
Yeah, it's kind of a real give and take.
More of a take.
Anyway.
So in case you forgot, I'm your tour guide, Jen.
And I'm your other tour guide, Christine, and we'll be heading on down to Zombie Town. So, the first concept of the modern-day zombie actually comes from George Romero's Night of the Living Dead film, but it's not where zombie lore actually originated. And he didn't even refer to the creatures in his film as zombies, but instead as ghouls.
Right.
The Epic of Gilgamesh is the first ever reference to the zombie in literature, though not by name, with the statements made by the character Ishtar, quote, "I will raise up the dead and they will eat the living, and the dead will outnumber the living," end quote.
Ooh, that's creepy.
Right? That's what'll happen, though. I almost guarantee there are more people dead in the ground than there are living. A lot of them are probably
True.
skeletons at this point, so that would be more of a Night of the Evil Dead situation. Ash versus the Evil Dead.
Oh.
The idea of the zombie, however, was actually a projection of the African slaves' relentless misery and subjugation at the hands of French colonists in Saint-Domingue, now known as Haiti. The French would often work the slaves to death within a few years, only to go out and capture and import more to work on the sugar plantations. These slaves believed that dying would release them back to Guinea, or Africa in general, where they could finally find peace in the afterlife.
Oh.
Now, while suicide was a common escape among slaves, the belief was that any who took their own lives were not allowed to return to Guinea, but instead were condemned to the Hispaniola plantations for eternity as undead slaves. Quote, "At once denied their own bodies and yet trapped inside them, a soulless zombie," end quote.
Man.
So the word zombie comes from the Congo word for soul, which is nzambi, and then in Haitian voodoo religions, the word zonbi, with an N, was born. The Haitian zombie actually refers to the practice by which a voodoo sorcerer, or bokor, captures the lingering soul of a person who has died unnaturally in a bottle or jar.
Okay.
In voodoo religion, a person can only die in one of two ways, either naturally by sickness or God's will, or unnaturally, murder, or before their time.
Sounds about right.
Right. They just
What are your
divided
other
it
options.
into two specific ways. So the soul of a person who died unnaturally will typically linger at their grave, unable to join their ancestors until the gods approve. This is when a Bokor would use a bottle or jar to capture the soul and can then control the undead body, or simply use the soul on its own, leaving the body to rest. A Bokor will typically enslave the soul to assist with their work. Best case scenario, they are simply spending their wait continuing working. Or worst case scenario, they are being forced to assist in black magic and may have even been murdered by the Bokor in the first place to become a zombie servant.
Man,
Yeah.
that sucks.
It's totally a different experience than what we know zombies to be.
Yeah.
In Haitian culture, even before voodoo took its own roots in zombie history, people don't fear the zombies themselves so much as the possibility that they might become one when they die. So where we feared the zombies themselves, they're terrified of just becoming one. They see zombies as like something to be pitied.
Okay.
The threat of becoming a zombie was used to keep Haitians in line for decades, with Bokors believed to be in the service of the Tonton Macoute, a brutal and much feared secret police used by Papa Duvalier's political regimes from 1957 to 1984. Now, pop culture has a list of ways to kill a zombie. Obviously, we've seen them.
Yep.
But with a Haitian zombie, the goal isn't to kill the individual, but to set them free, either by feeding them salt, or if a zombie sees the ocean, it's said that its mind will return, and it will become self-aware and angry, trying to return to its grave.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I thought that was interesting. Like, just seeing the ocean.
That is interesting.
It's like, all right, well, both things are tied to salt.
Yeah, I was going to say there's salt in the water at the ocean.
Yeah, but it's like, I guess they just kind of, I mean, obviously they know that because they've been around the ocean when they were alive. So they're like, oh, salt, I'm dead. Why am I awake?
Is Salt Bay their savior?
Just comes in and sprinkles it on the zombies. Here you go. Open your mouth, please.
You are free.
Open your mouth, please. Thank you. All right.
Salt Bay is God. Among the zombies.
The zombies of the Haitian tradition, yes. So the first time the word zombie, without the E, made its way to American print in a newspaper was in a short story called The Unknown Painter and was published in 1838.
Mm-hmm.
The story is about a young African slave owned by a Spanish painter who claims that the zombie appears in the art studio at night to work on the paintings of the slave owner's apprentices. While the story was dismissed as an African myth, it seemed to stick with people enough that different versions of the story were printed and published throughout the 1800s, and the zombie came to be associated with, quote, a creature of African origin that willingly performed services for whites, end quote.
Willingly?
That's what they believed.
Okay.
Yeah. In 1929, a book by William Seabrook called The Magic Island came out and talked about Haiti and voodoo cults, introducing readers to the more original lore of the zombie, so what they're supposed to be. This book is said to be the inspiration for the film White Zombie, which was the first introduction of white people into zombie lore.
Oh.
White Zombie came out in 1932 and was about a couple that are talked into getting married on a Haitian plantation, say that 10 times fast, by the owner. The owner of the plantation had been plotting to seduce the bride and enlisted the help of a Creole mill owner to get a zombie potion to use on her.
Okay.
Zombie potion is apparently a known voodoo concoction using tetrodotoxin, a deadly neurotoxin found in pufferfish and some other marine species, which, if used in sublethal doses, could help create zombie-like symptoms, like difficulty walking, mental confusion, and respiratory problems. High doses can lead to paralysis and coma, which can make a person appear to be dead, only to, quote, revive later.
That's scary.
Right. White Zombie is apparently also why George Romero didn't call his creatures zombies in his Night of the Living Dead film and instead referred to them as ghouls. Because again, he had seen that zombies are this other thing that are more mind-controlled than risen from the dead. So the fear of the living dead has spanned most civilizations throughout history, however. Jiangxi in China, which refers to a hungry ghost that rises from the dead to consume the living for not burying them properly.
That's the jumping one.
Yeah, the jumping ones.
That's how they move. They have to hop. Yeah.
In Arab religion, living an immoral life can lead to someone becoming a zombie, which they actually call a ghoul, and was most commonly...
So that's different than Romero's
yes,
ghoul.
and was most commonly a woman, or more specifically, a prostitute.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. This version would actually hide in the desert and sort of call people to it like a siren to devour them.
Ooh.
Yeah. That was interesting. I was like, oh, there's a desert siren. In Scandinavian lore, the Draugr was an undead Viking with an insatiable appetite for human flesh. This is also a enemy in Skyrim.
Really?
Yes. And they are most certainly undead Vikings. You just kind of shout them into
That's
submission, though. It's fine.
Oh, all right.
This version is superhumanly strong and retains knowledge of its former self and knows what it is and delights in what it's doing. The only way to stop it
That's different.
is to somehow lure it back into the ground, because it's said to be stronger than
do you
even
do
heroes.
that?
I would assume have them chase you down there. I would guess they want to kill you.
Like make a trap?
Yeah. Or just, they're trying to kill you and just like run into a cave.
Yeah.
That's where you found them all in Skyrim. They were in caves.
Yep.
The Western European Revenant is the closest to our current version of the zombie and was documented by a 12th century cleric named William of Newburgh, history's first zombie hunter, apparently.
Oh, wow, that's fun.
Yeah. He wrote about hungry spirits that rose from the grave to feed on the living and sought to understand and exterminate them.
You said this was in 1200?
Yep. 12th
Wow,
century.
That's crazy to think that
Even back then.
zombie lore has expanded that far.
Right. Yeah,
Wow.
It's been around for so long, and
That's
it's
cool.
just made its way in its own variations across the world.
Yeah.
The threat of the dead potentially coming back to life and harming the living was taken so seriously by many civilizations that they developed special burial rituals to ensure that it wouldn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
Machalismos is the ancient Greek word meaning to mutilate the body so that it doesn't come back from the dead, like removing the internal organs. Thus, they wouldn't have
like
those.
mummification kind of
Right.
thing?
In its
Embalming?
own kind of way, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they just take
Okay.
everything out.
So, like, if it did come back to life, it would have nothing to live
Yeah,
off
it wouldn't
of.
have the things to keep it functioning, I believe, is their
Interesting.
thinking there.
That is so weird that people were just so scared about things coming back to life that they just had all these weird things to make sure that didn't
Oh,
happen.
you think it doesn't still happen today?
I mean, no?
The Chinese physically restrain each body prior to burial and then pinned them into the coffin itself.
Ooh.
The Nordic cultures developed rituals to confuse the dead. So the body is removed from the house feet first in order to prevent the body from being able to look back and see where it's coming from. And then they would seal the door the body was taken out through so the dead can't find their way back into the house, even if they do get up and remember where the house is.
Ooh, creepy.
This tradition of attempting to confuse the dead continued on through the 19th and even into the early 20th century throughout Europe and parts of the Americas.
Mm-hmm.
Ancient graves have been unearthed where the skeletons are pinned down by rocks and heavy objects, or have a brick or stone placed in the mouth to prevent the corpse from being able to move or bite if it had reanimated. And I have pictures of the stones in the mouth that I will post. The mouth is seen in some societies as the main portal for the soul to leave the body, and is thus the way that the soul might return, or an evil spirit might inhabit the body and reanimate it.
Oh, so they block it. Wow.
Yeah. Even today, coffins are bolted shut through some fear, however conscious or subconscious, that the dead might someday rise again. Because it's getting buried 6 feet under the ground, why do you have to bolt it shut?
Yeah, I never thought about that.
I didn't either until I heard that in the documentary. I was like, oh, that's true.
Wow.
See? It does still happen
Because
today.
like it's not even like preventing grave robbing, because like you've already spent all this time digging the 6-foot hole to get to the grave.
Yeah, you're gonna break it open.
Like you're gonna have the tools to break it open.
Exactly. Yeah, it's literally to keep something from being able to dig its way back out.
Interesting.
The idea of the zombies even exists to an extent in the Bible. Jesus Christ himself rises from the dead. But rather than taking life from others, he desires to give eternal life and is thus a sort of anti-zombie.
Okay.
The book of Ezekiel describes a vision where Ezekiel is, quote, dropped in a boneyard and prophesies to the bones. The bones then start to shake and become covered with muscles and flesh until they're reanimated, yet there was no breath in them, end quote.
Ooh.
The book of Isaiah states, quote, thy dead men shall live, together with my dead body shall they rise. Awake and sing, ye that dwell in dust, for thy dew is as the dew of herbs, and the earth shall cast out the dead, end quote. There are also numerous passages throughout the Old and New Testament of the resurrection of saints and sinners in the end times. These kinds of zombies being so prevalent in a piece of literature consumed by so many could also maybe be why zombies are so widely associated with apocalypse situations these days.
Mm-hmm.
At the core of the fear of zombies is a human's aversions to being eaten in general, but also furthermore the distinct taboo of people eating other people.
Yep.
Jeffrey Dahmer,
Sounds about
who
right.
we'll talk about more in depth at a later time, actually attempted to make his victims into real-life zombies by drilling holes into their skulls
What?
and pouring acid inside.
What?
He was, in a sense, attempting to keep the victims alive while eliminating the element of choice and, in a sense, creating his own zombies so they could never leave him. He had a fear of being left.
Well, maybe if you were just nice to people,
Maybe.
instead of fucking turning them into zombies.
Then, I don't know, killing them and eating them.
I mean, that's a whole other thing, but it's not how you make friends, Jeffrey.
That's good. That's not how you make friends, Jeffrey. Another fear people have of a zombie outbreak is not only their relentlessness and ability to easily outlast the living since they're dead, but the idea of being attacked by a horde.
Yeah, that's fucking creepy.
Siege warfare has been fairly common throughout history, and with zombies, there's the added threat of them never running out of resources, tiring, or giving up. You also can't reason with them because they could care less. Like, they don't think.
Yeah, they don't have a brain.
Yeah.
I mean, they do, but it doesn't function.
And
It has one function.
They'd rather eat yours.
Exactly.
There has always been a primal fear in humans that once your own group of people have set up a civilization for themselves, there is always going to be another large group of people nearby that haven't done any of that and just want to take it from your group.
Yeah.
One of the most famous examples of this took place in 5th century Rome when the Visigoths relentlessly swarmed the city and within 2 years had taken it down.
Jeez.
Yeah. About 800 years later, the most famous horde in history, and in fact where the word horde originates, was when the Mongols tore through Central Asia. The Mongols brought a new level of brutality to warfare as they slaughtered everything in their path, boiling and crushing their victims, catapulting severed heads, consuming their victims, and even using dead bodies in biological warfare. So people who had died of plague, they would catapult those bodies into people's cities and towns to infect them.
Damn.
Yeah.
That's like fucking messed up, but that's smart.
It was the first example of biological warfare in history.
That's fucking crazy.
Yeah. In World War II, thousands of Nazi troops surrounded Leningrad and triggered one of the longest and deadliest sieges in history. Nearly 900 days went by as battle raged. Thousands starved in the streets, and there was simply no negotiation to be had with this enemy. There was no talking Hitler out of taking it over. Throughout history, a number of stories have been told to caution humanity against stepping too far out of line into the realm of godly creation. One such story comes from Jewish folklore about the golem, a man-made creation that turns against him. The golem was imbued with life by the rabbi of Prague in 16th century to protect the Jews from persecution, but becomes an uncontrollable, powerful monster. The golem becomes increasingly violent, killing both Gentiles and Jews, and eventually turns on its creator as well, who is forced to remove the amulet that gave it life and kill it. Later, Mary Shelley takes her inspiration from the Prometheus tale about a man creating humans out of clay, and writes her own cautionary tale about Dr. Frankenstein, who creates a being out of human parts. So with that, it's interesting to see that the zombies where they originated were an example of eternal enslavement and no escape from the slave's pain and suffering, whereas zombies now are more of like a fantasy of escape from an imperfect world into a new world that you can create to be better than it is now.
Yeah.
I just thought it was really interesting that it's been completely flipped on its head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So that'll do it for the history and folklore.
All right. So now that we have all that history,
Woo!
Let's talk about the science of zombies.
All right.
Because that's fun stuff. There's so much. So depending on what movie, TV show, video game, or whatever type of media you're consuming, the creation of a zombie differs. But let's look at some real-life scientific ways that a possible zombie could be created.
Oh boy.
So according to various zombie experts, which by the way is a really cool title and I wish I had that.
That would be amazing.
I want to be a zombie expert, but I digress. A zombie outbreak would most likely be the result of a man-made biological substance that would need to spread rapidly, but also have a dormant stage where a person could be symptomless so that they could travel, potentially spreading it further. Because if you think about it, if someone's on a plane and then they become a zombie, the whole plane's going down.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, and then everybody's
there's no
gonna
fucking
die.
way that plane's making it to it. Exactly. Yeah. So it can't spread that way. So it needs to be a little dormant so when they land in the next airport, then, chaos can ensue. Yeah. So for a virus, according to ASAP Science on YouTube, it would need to be capable of infecting neurons, like rabies, and have the ability for retrograde axonal transport, which means it can transport from its point of entry through the body to the brain.
So like a bite to the brain?
Yep. So if it bites your toe, it has to make its way through the body to get to your brain.
I don't think I've ever seen an example of a zombie biting somebody's toe without having ripped apart something else first. That's interesting.
True. Yep. The virus would also need to specifically target areas of the brain responsible for things like hunger, behavior, emotion, memory, and impulsivity. Areas like the amygdala, which is responsible for emotion and memory, the ventromedial hypothalamus, which regulates hunger, the frontal lobe, which regulates morality and impulsivity, and the cerebellum, which is responsible for coordination and movement.
So, like, most of the brain.
Yeah, but specific parts of
Right.
the brain, because if it damages the entire brain, it's not going to be alive
Exactly.
anymore. But it had to, like, these specific
Yeah, it
parts
still needs
to make a
motor
zombie,
function
right?
and whatnot.
Yeah, and it needs the frontal cortex, right, is the impulsivity and morality. It needs to get rid of that
Yeah,
shit
so you
in
don't...
order to bite through
Yeah,
somebody.
exactly. Yeah.
So, but you'd also need to have a virus that prevents decay of muscles, like the rabies virus, because it still causes jerking movements and decreased cognition, but it still allows you to remain mobile so that you can spread
Right.
it. A smart virus would know
Yeah.
that. Like, I need to spread, so I need to move.
Yeah.
So if I'm decaying these muscles
Then I
and
can't.
I infect you and you're just jello.
Yeah, you're just kind of sat there
it's moot.
snapping at whatever goes by its face.
Exactly. So another possible cause could be due to the parasite Toxoplasma gondii,
Oh, wow.
and it grows in the intestines of cats and can be spread through their feces to other animals, such as birds, mice, cows, etc., by ingestion of infested water, vegetables, or meat.
Interesting. Just makes me think of all the dogs that eat cat poop and how they would become
Yeah.
zombies.
When a mouse is infected with Toxoplasma gondii, it infects the brain, and the mouse then loses its fear of cats by disrupting brain cell communication in the amygdala, which I previously mentioned affects emotion. Therefore, the mouse feels no fear.
That's very interesting.
Yep. So the mouse is then eaten by the cat, where the life cycle of the parasite can continue.
Oh.
So it was mentioned that the mouse doesn't feel any fear, so it's more likely to be up and about, and the fight or flight response isn't there, right?
Right.
So it won't flee when it sees its predator.
Right. So it won't immediately
So the
hide.
cat can just fucking eat it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it doesn't feel any fear. It's just like, hey, what's up, cat?
Yeah. So a cat that maybe wasn't already infected could now be infected and pass it on
Exactly.
again. That's
Mhm.
interesting, but also a little strange.
It's been found that about 30 to 50% of the global population is infected with this parasite.
Okay.
However, if the host has a properly functioning immune system, that's enough to keep the parasite dormant and never cause the disease to progress to toxoplasmosis.
Oh.
So chances are you and I are infected with this.
Oh, yeah, because we got 3 cats
Yep.
each.
Yep. And I've had cats my entire life.
Same.
Yep. So if we become crazy,
Yeah.
we're literally crazy cat ladies.
And we're coming to infect you.
Okay. Symptoms of toxoplasmosis include flu-like symptoms such as muscle pain, fever, and headache, but it also can cause abnormal behavior in some people. Some scientists have found a correlation between an infection and self-inflicted violence, impulsivity, and make more people prone to mental illness such as schizophrenia, but this finding is still debated and being researched. So,
Interesting. And bringing impulsivity back up, I remember hearing somewhere once upon a time that the human jaw is 100% capable of biting through flesh and bone and muscle, but the only thing that stops us is the fact that we believe we will break our jaw.
which is fucking crazy because it's like those instances where like mothers are fearing for their child, right? That like in psychology, it's constantly brought up that like a child is stuck under a car
Yeah.
or something, right? And then the mother just like
Throws it and hulks it away.
crazy strength, exactly, and can hulk this car up. So it's like your brain is stopping you from doing these things, but your body is fully capable of doing it. It's the mind over matter.
Yeah,
thing,
like we're
right?
more superhuman than we even know.
Yeah, crazy. So any infections that result in encephalitis, which is inflammation of the active tissues in the brain, can cause behavioral changes. Typically, encephalitis is caused by some sort of viral infection like measles, mumps, rubella, chickenpox, or even transmission through mosquitoes and ticks, such as the West Nile virus and Zika, to name a few. And it can even be caused as an autoimmune response, where a person's own immune system attacks the brain.
Oh, okay.
Autoimmune diseases are trippy.
Yeah.
So the behavior changes of encephalitis can include confusion, disorientation, cognitive impairment, irritability, impulsivity, and aggression, which are all things we see
In zombies.
in zombies. Yep. Another cause of zombie-like behavior in organisms is the Ophiocordyceps unilateralis.
Oh, wow. That's a mouthful.
That's a mouthful, so I'm just going to call them cordyceps. This is a fungus that releases spores into the forest, and when ants come through foraging, they latch onto them, seep into their skin, making their way through the body and controlling the muscle fibers.
Okay.
With full control over the ant's body movements, it controls it to move to an ideal growing place, and it makes the ant bite down on the underside of a leaf. And because it has full control over its muscles, the ant essentially has lockjaw on the leaf, where it will stay until days later the fungus shoots out like a mushroom-like growth called a stroma, where it can shoot out more spores for ants to be infected.
That's interesting. It's always so interesting that it's like they're just like using these creatures to just move places, and it's like, okay, well then what? Well, then I'm gonna move further. Like, okay, but then what? Like, that's all it sounds like they're doing is just getting from different places.
Yeah, so, I mean, what happens is the spores then spread over the forest floor so more ants can get infected and then move to other places. And it was said that they don't infect entire colonies at once because that would be moot.
Right.
Like, why am I going to destroy my source of transmission? Yeah. So they only do a few at a time. Yeah. And then what was creepy was, so normally worker ants, they all kind of do the same behavior, right? They have like one mission and they do it. The thing with the infected ants is they continue about their business and people, and not people.
The other ants.
The other ants have no idea that it's infected. Right. But it just has this like erratic behavior where it'll dissociate from the group and then go up onto this leaf and then just fucking lockjaw onto the thing and then die.
I wonder what the ants would do if they found out it was infected. Like, would they care? I don't feel like they care like humans do.
Yeah.
Really?
No.
Oh, they destroy it.
So, no, in ant colonies, when they sense that one of the ants is sick, they throw it out of the colony.
Yeah. Which, again, is still kind of like, okay, well, that's what it was going to do anyway. So I wonder why the fungus bothers pretending.
I don't know. Maybe it needs a certain amount of time to
find the location.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there are actually over 600 different species of Ophiocordyceps.
Interesting.
And not all of them result in zombie-like behavior. Right. So some are even said to be used in traditional Eastern medicine as an immune booster, cancer treatment, or an aphrodisiac.
Of course, because we have to find an aphrodisiac in everything. Because that's what we do as humans.
So why not a fungus?
Ew. Mushrooms.
Mushrooms are good.
Gross. Yeah, look at you getting infected. You're going to end up in The Last of Us. I won't, because I won't eat those bitches.
Then I'll be a zombie expert because I am one. You're welcome. That's called immersive therapy. Another possible cause of a zombie outbreak could be due to the use of prions. And prions are a type of pathogenic protein that triggers normal proteins in the brain to fold abnormally.
Right.
They can affect both humans and animals and can be transmitted through exposure to infected brain tissue or spinal fluid through a medical procedure or eating infected meat. So it can also be passed down to someone with a previous family history of prion disease, or in most cases, it just happens sporadically.
Oh.
Like in the case of Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, which I will refer to CJD.
Okay.
So, in the early stages of CJD, people experience memory loss, behavior changes, loss of vision, and lack of coordination. And as the disease progresses, the brain deteriorates, leading to pronounced involuntary movements, weakness of extremities, loss of speech, and people may even fall into a coma.
Okay.
So this is also known as mad cow disease in cows.
Yes. Yes, it is.
But it's Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease in humans.
Okay.
Just letting you know. Another prion-related disease was found in Papua New Guinea, where part of the funeral ritual was to eat the brain of the person who passed away. Obviously, brains infected with prions would then cause others to be infected as well, and they called the disease Kuru. So now that we've established possible causes of a zombie outbreak, let's look into how a zombie apocalypse might last and how to survive.
That's insane to think that there's that many things currently in existence without, us screwing around with them and making them into weaponized zombie viruses.
Yeah. So, I mean, all it takes is a mad scientist to mutate one of these things that already exist.
Right. Yeah.
Because there are so many things that affect animals that are currently not transmissible to humans, but very well can be.
Yeah, like they literally just have to be like, I just am sick of people and they keep getting my Starbucks order wrong, so I'm fucking killing them all.
That's why, like I said, that if there were to be a zombie outbreak, it would be the cause of man.
Oh, yeah, 100%. There's no way it would just come from the animal kingdom on its own. And if it did, it's hundreds of years away. And I don't think our planet has that long.
Well,
I don't know. How long does the sun have?
yeah, I was going to say, I think it depends on the sun. And I think they
That's my
said,
thought.
what, year 5 billion or something? I don't know. So zombies can spread quickly because 1, people don't actually die, so it's hard to contain.
Right.
2, there's no cure for treatment for zombies.
Right.
And 3, it's not a debilitating disease where you're bedridden while you recover. It makes you go and infect other people.
You're completely ambulatory and just out there.
Yep.
Either running or shambling to your neighbor's house.
And obviously, initially with the zombie outbreak, people are going to be in denial and they're going to be like, hey, what's wrong with you?
100%.
Yeah, like, do you need to see a doctor? Let me help you. And argh,
yeah, exactly.
you're dead.
I'm sorry. Are you just feeling a little under the weather today? You look a little off.
Just a little bit.
Why are you drooling?
Why is there blood on your mouth? So there's actually a simulator created by people at Cornell that will predict the spread of a zombie outbreak.
Wow.
So it's based on other bloodborne disease models. And depending on what parameters you insert, such as the kill to bite ratio, the time it takes for a zombie to walk 1 mile, or things like that, you can kind of predict how long it will take for the zombie disease to spread. Right. So I'll post a link to that. You can play around with it and make your own zombie apocalypse if you want.
Oh, the fantasy we all want, especially today.
So I watched a game theory episode where Matt Pat set the parameters to mimic those of the zombie game 7 Days to Die, which tour guide Christine will talk about in our next episode.
Yeah, it's our favorite, one of them. One of our favorites.
Yeah, I love playing that game. But after setting up these parameters, he chose Atlanta as the start of the breakout, given that it has the busiest airport in the United States, and he just wanted to make sure that it spread as fast as possible.
Interesting.
Within 7 days, according to the model, 50% of the U.S. population was wiped out.
Okay. Wow.
From the East Coast and West Coast inward.
That's all it fucking takes is 50% of people to just wipe out their 50%. Like, it took a week.
Yeah. So this showed that the central states of the United States might be safest during a zombie apocalypse.
Right.
Because according to his model, it would take 41 days before the outbreak would reach the rural areas of the U.S.
Makes sense.
So it gives you plenty of time to prepare.
Yeah, so I'm fucked. You're fucked.
We just need to know that if a zombie apocalypse starts, we need to just fucking book it to like Kansas.
Yeah, but like I need to hope and pray that people from Atlanta aren't coming to Las Vegas that weekend.
True.
But
we're both homebodies.
True.
Like you don't spend time on the Strip. I don't spend time in like Gaslamp.
That's true outside of
like,
Comic-Con. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, we can get away with being our little introvert selves.
And both of us are on Facebook so much reading the news that like as soon as we see someone zombie, oh fuck, Kansas it is. Let's fucking go.
Pick up people on the way. Don't worry. Oh, that might not be a good idea. Y'all are on your own. I'm sorry.
So in order to survive, you should follow the rules of 3. So you won't be able to survive 3 minutes without air, 3 hours without shelter, 3 days without water, and 3 weeks without food.
How long without sleep?
I'm testing that theory right now. So in this time period of 41 days after this thing has started, think of where you could go in order to be safest and write it out.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we will talk about that in Afterthoughts.
We'll talk about where we would go in Afterthoughts, so
do.
Stay tuned for that.
You got to join on our Patreon to do that, though.
Obviously, major cities would be out of the question since densely populated areas would be the first to be wiped out. And most of these major cities are found on coastlines, so you'd want to find somewhere inland.
Right.
You'd also need to find a place with an adequate and reliable source of fresh water, so lakes and rivers. Right. You would need a climate that's good for agricultural sustainability, so it can't be too hot or too cold. And obviously, if you don't have a green thumb, it's probably the best to learn now.
Yeah.
I kill everything that I own, and I try really hard, but they just die. I even kill succulents. People are like, oh, if you don't have a green thumb, get a succulent. Well, those fucking die too. So, obviously, in a zombie apocalypse, I'm not in charge of agriculture.
I've never tried to grow anything. That would be my mom's forte. She keeps plants alive all over the house.
Okay, so your mom's coming with us to Kansas.
Coming up with the crew.
Now that you've found the area you want to be in, you need to find or fortify a place for shelter. Right. It's recommended that you find somewhere to stay for the long haul instead of wandering out in the wilderness aimlessly. So if you can't stay in your own home, you need to find somewhere else and just make sure there's nobody or nothing else inside. Right. So if you don't know what direction you're going, look at the satellite dishes on top of the houses. They will generally point south-ish.
Ish.
According to my husband, they don't point directly south. They could point southeast. They could point southwest, but it's south.
South something.
Ish. Yep.
That's
so
interesting.
at least in the northern hemisphere.
Right.
So
oh yeah.
This is all in North America.
Yeah, sorry guys, we can't speak to your country.
So this is surviving in North America. If you're not in North America or you're in the southern hemisphere, you have to come up with your own zombie plan.
Yeah.
Or just do exactly the opposite of what I'm saying. Maybe it'll help. I don't know.
I would still imagine that there are certain key rules of thumb, like staying out of highly densely populated areas and
finding fresh
and
water.
Shelter.
Yeah. But just in terms of the satellite thing.
We can't help you with
maybe
finding directions.
it points north.
Yeah, I don't know.
So this is due to the geosynchronous orbit, which is when the satellite on Earth is in communication and synced up with the satellite in orbit.
Oh, interesting.
So it points towards the equator. So maybe yours in the southern hemisphere point north, because that would be the equator would be north.
That's
of you.
true. That's fair enough.
Your zombie preparedness kit should be similar to any disaster preparedness kit. If you don't have one, Costco and Amazon seem to have some for a decent
Did
price.
you start looking while you were researching?
I fucking look.
I started thinking about it. I'm like, I should probably build one of those.
I should definitely have at least a disaster preparedness kit, especially living in California where we have fucking earthquakes all the fucking time.
Yeah, we don't have shit here except wind, and that doesn't do anything.
Yeah. So you should have an adequate supply for food and water, as well as a medical kit, a fire starter, and a weapon. Some recommend a bladed weapon so you don't have to search for ammo with a gun, and gunfire could potentially attract more zombies, but to each their own.
Again, we'll talk about ours later.
Exactly. A heavy blunt object might also weigh you down when you travel, so maybe a sledgehammer wouldn't be the best way to go.
Oh, why not? I always have one in 7 days to die. Always.
To purify water, you can make a solar still. You can do this by filling a container with the impure water and placing a second clean container inside. Cover both containers with a plastic tarp with a rock in the center. And the heat of the sun will evaporate the impure water, causing the condensation to build up on the plastic, and the weight of the rock will guide the clean water to be caught in the clean, empty container.
Right. Okay.
And voila! Clean distilled water.
Without having to drink your own pee. Yeah. Which we saw in a documentary, and that poor guy looked miserable.
I hope it doesn't resort to that.
He looked so miserable. He said he was okay.
I know, he didn't. You can also boil water.
Right.
If you have access to that, like you have your fire starter and your preparedness kit, so you can start a fire and boil the water as well.
Right.
That's another way. And according to the CDC and EPA, you can also purify water by adding a couple drops of household bleach to it.
I always wondered how that would end up making the water taste. Or like, I did wonder how much, but I guess a couple drops is the answer.
Yeah. It's like very dilute, so like you do a couple drops per like gallon of water.
Oh, okay.
So it might be minuscule. Right. But there's specific directions on how to do this, so don't just go drinking bleach. We will post that information on our website.
Please, for the love of God,
I am not condoning you.
Do not drink bleach. Because Nopeville's tour guides told you to, because we did not.
I'm explicitly telling you not to. There are set guidelines that the CDC set, and I will post those. So if you miss that, that's on you.
We said put a little bit in.
Just tiny,
teeny bit.
In terms of how long a zombie apocalypse will actually last and how long you would need to hone in on your survival tactics can be theorized and dependent on how long it takes a human body to decompose after death.
Okay.
Forensic investigators actually set up body farms in order to test how long it takes for a body to decompose in different conditions.
I'm sorry, what?
Body farms.
Why? Well, I mean, I get the why, but like...
Well, so it helps them. So like when a coroner is like investigating a murder, for instance, they can say, that helps them say how long the body's been here, and according to like the elements that it's exposed to, how long it's been dead.
I know, but just hearing the words body farm just sounds like they're just like planting them and like watching them grow and seeing how...
Pretty much. Pretty much. That's pretty much what it is. That's pretty much what it fucking is. That's probably part of their experiment as well. So these are the 5 steps a decomposed body takes before it's fully decomposed. Right. So 1, initial decay, or the fresh stage.
Ew.
So this takes place at about 0 to 3 days after death. And in this step, after the heart stops beating, body temperature drops and all the blood drains to the lower part of the body. The skin turns gray and tight, and the eyes become sunken into the skull. Step 2, putrefaction, or the bloating stage, occurs about 4 to 10 days after death. During this stage, gases accumulate in the body, which causes swelling throughout the body and causes the eyes and tongue to protrude out.
Bloaters.
And since the gases have nowhere to go, the skin starts to crack and rupture, and in about 2 to 3 weeks, the skin can easily be peeled off of the corpse.
You know, aside from the disgust that I'm feeling at your descriptions, it reminds me of the different types of zombies that I'll talk about in games of like why each one kind of looks the way it does. Like maybe
Because they're just in different stages of decomposition.
Or they just reanimated at different stages of decomposition. That's an interesting theory.
That is an interesting theory. Depending on if the already dead can become zombies, or if you have to die and then become a zombie.
Yeah, which a lot of pop culture zombie lore seems to have the impression that the dead can rise in addition to infecting the living to become undead.
Yeah. The third stage is known as black putrefaction or active decay. And this happens about 10 to 20 days after the body starts to decompose and the skin turns black.
Okay.
The gas is released from the body and the body and organs liquefy into a black goo-like substance.
Ew.
Gross. Stage 4 is the butyric fermentation or advanced decay. This happens after about 20 to 50 days of decomposition, and any remaining parts of the body and flesh dry out. The last stage is the dry stage, which can be anywhere from 50 to 350 days, and at this point, you're just a skeleton.
Oh, I was picturing like mummification, but I guess that's pretty much the same thing. Like you've just dried to your bones.
Yeah.
Whatever hasn't sloughed off.
You're just bones. Obviously, this rate is accurate if the body is able to decay in a controlled environment.
Right.
But zombies are constantly on the move, therefore constantly exposed to the elements. So a dead body exposed to the air will decompose more quickly than a body that is buried. And the rate of decomposition varies depending on temperature, humidity, cause of death, exposure to scavengers like insects and other animals, etc. Right. There's so many factors into how a body decomposes. Right. According to Casper's law of decomposition, if all other factors are equal, a body left in open air decomposes 2 times as fast as if it were in water, and 8 times as fast as if it were buried underground. So all the zombies obviously aren't buried underground, so they are decomposing 8 times as fast as somebody who is.
Right. Assuming that they're not infected with something that's trying to kind of actively prevent them from decomposing.
Right. Colder climates would cause the body to decompose slower, and warmer temperatures accelerate the rate of decomposition. So take this as you will, but assuming everyone just finds somewhere to hole up, chances are zombies will starve and decompose in about a year. But remember, any new person that gets turned into a zombie will start the cycle all over again, so fucking stay in your houses.
Stay inside! You don't need to go to Starbucks.
A National Geographic documentary I watched painted a picture of a zombie apocalypse, and it goes something like this. So a zombie apocalypse will start slow. Doctors will see the first few patients. First responders will have little time to react, and hospitals will become overwhelmed. Unless the zombies were wiped out in an early stage of development, humans will be wiped out. Infrastructure will collapse and the grid will go down. Social order will crumble. There will be small groups of order that will clash with other groups, and utter chaos will ensue. On top of death by zombies, there will also be death due to disease, dehydration, starvation, and the panic and disorder of people. A barter system will be set in place, as common currency would be rendered useless. Those that don't have skills to either aid in defense or contribute to gathering supplies will be treated as second-class citizens. Long-term survival will be dependent on cooperation. The lone wolf model doesn't work in a zombie apocalypse. They work in groups. You work in groups. An individual cannot rebuild a civilization. A community is best to survive. So stay safe, friends.
That's why we're building a community here.
Let's build our community so all of you can be part of our zombie apocalypse team.
Our plan.
And if you want to know our plan, then subscribe to our Patreon and listen to our zombie afterthoughts.
Yeah, for as little as $5 a month. You can hear all of our extra unscripted shenanigans.
But you also get a sticker.
And access to our little community.
Yep.
All right. So if you enjoyed your tour today, please leave us a review on wherever you booked your tour. Reviews help us grow and reach more listeners so we can provide you with more tours. Remember to visit our website at nopevillepodcast.com, where you will have access to our show notes and anything we referenced in today's tour, like the CDC guide and the pictures of the skeletons with stones in their mouths, stuff like that. And you'll be able to follow us on all of our social media for updates, polls, events, and just interacting with us, which is Nopeville Cast on Twitter and Nopeville Podcast on both Instagram and Facebook.
Yep, come say hi to us. We don't bite yet.
I mean, unless you like it. If you want to be a part of our campfire stories, which are stories submitted by you for us to read either fiction or nonfiction, you can submit them through the Contact Us form on our website and select campfire stories, or you can send an email to us directly at nopevillepodcast@gmail.com, and be sure to write campfire stories in your subject line so we know what you're emailing us about. No tour is complete without first stopping by the gift shop before you leave. Go ahead and click on the gift shop on our website, and be sure to pick up a souvenir for yourself or a loved one. And we have all kinds of neat shit, so you should check it out. And then last but not least, gratuity isn't required, but sure is appreciated. Visit our Patreon at patreon.com/nopevillepodcast to see how you can support us and get some awesome rewards in return, like some cool swag, stickers, t-shirts, coins.
Access to our Patreon-only Facebook group.
And listening to our after-tour ramblings called Afterthoughts, as well as some mini tours, etc. And that is part 1 of the zombie tour. We are glad you were here to join us today.
Yep, and we'll see you guys again next tour.
For the second half. Bye!
Bye!
Excellent. I see most of you returned, and relatively unscathed. Bravo. I hope you enjoyed your visit to Nopeville, and look forward to seeing you again next time.
Thanks again for listening to Scary Time by Indie Drop-In Network. Check out all of Indie Drop-In shows at indiedropin.com. If you would like your show featured, reach out to us at Indie Drop-In on all social media or go to indiedropin.com.